Deep in the Nevada desert sits a massive military installation, hidden behind jagged mountain ranges. It is surrounded by motion sensors and heavily armed guards. For decades, the U.S. government refused to even acknowledge this place was on a map. When an institution enforces absolute silence, it leaves a void, and without official facts, public imagination quickly rushed in to fill the gap. The seeds for those theories were planted in 1947, shortly after an infamous crash in Roswell, New Mexico. Look at the bizarre, foil-like wreckage the military was photographed handling at the time. Witnesses claimed these unusual materials, and possibly even alien bodies, were secretly packed up and shipped directly to Area 51. The public was primed. From that point on, if a civilian saw an odd shape or a strange light moving above the Nevada testing grounds, they immediately assumed it was a flying saucer. But consider an alternative explanation. What if the people looking up at the night sky weren't imagining things? What if they were tracking physical aircraft that behaved in ways no conventional plane of the era possibly could? Declassified records show us what was actually happening in those hangars. Area 51 was built as a remote laboratory during the Cold War to secretly develop advanced aerospace technology away from Soviet surveillance. One of the first projects to roll onto the runway was the U-2 spy plane, which featured uniquely long glider-like wings. Engineers had a specific problem to solve. To evade enemy radar and surface-to-air missiles, the U-2 had to fly higher than anyone thought humanly possible. This altitude scale shows the massive discrepancy. While a standard 1950s commercial airliner topped out far lower in the atmosphere, the U-2 was engineered to operate way up in the extreme stratosphere, over 60,000 feet in the air. At that extreme height, the U-2 would catch the rays of the setting sun while the ground below was already completely dark. To an observer standing in the shadows, that silver fuselage intensely reflecting sunlight looked exactly like a glowing, hovering disk. The confusion compounded a few years later. The average technology of the early 1960s was mostly heavy, rounded, and chrome. Then aerospace engineers produced the A-12. It was a matte black, heavily swept, needle-like aircraft that looked entirely predatory. If your daily frame of reference is a bulky metal station wagon with rounded fenders, a razor-sharp triangular silhouette tearing through the sky is going to look completely alien. The plane wasn't shaped that way for aesthetics. It was a strict engineering requirement to survive the blistering heat of Mach 3 friction. To outrun a missile and disappear from radar screens, human engineers had to invent a machine that discarded every known rule of traditional airplane design. The military quickly realized they had a unique problem. Civilian pilots and ground observers were logging hundreds of UFO sightings, completely unaware they were actually spotting classified spy planes. National security protocols tied officials' hands. They were forbidden from clarifying the record or admitting these aircraft were even in the sky. Whenever the government issued a flat denial or offered a flimsy excuse about weather balloons, it only convinced the public that something huge was being hidden. Officials soon recognized the strategic value of this paranoia. As long as people were hunting for extraterrestrials, they weren't looking for America's most sensitive aviation breakthroughs. The conspiracy had become a self-sustaining shield. Pulling back the layers of extraterrestrial lore, we find a legacy built on human engineering. A relatively small group of scientists managed to push aviation technology decades into the future. We naturally gravitate toward the thrill of a conspiracy, but the sheer fact that human minds, under immense pressure, solved these impossible physics problems is arguably a better story. Today, Area 51 is still an active, expanding, and highly restricted facility hidden out there in the desert. The U-2 and the A-12 have been declassified, but the government continues maintaining total silence on what is rolling out of those hangars today. If 1960s aviation projects were so advanced that civilians assumed they were built by extraterrestrials, you have to wonder what kind of impossible physics they are secretly testing behind those guarded gates today.